Hello, I am your everyday average Jonathan. Join me this week as I turn this and this into this, a highly stylized, artistic, large cross. Hello, I am your everyday average Jonathan. I'm an ordinary guy with ordinary tools making extraordinary items. I am a self-taught craftsman. I'm an amateur blacksmith and a novice woodworker. I have no professional training and a basic set of tools that I've cobbled together over the years. The items that I make each week tend to be whimsical in nature, fantastical, echoing times of a forgotten yore. Items like weapons and armor, structures, novelties, practical items that I use on my ranch here in Colorado. I gather my inspiration for what I build from a lot of sources. Stories that I've read, movies that I've seen, other artists' renderings of something that I find quite beautiful or fascinating. But recently I've come to grips with, or a much more direct realization, that a lot of the imagery of things that I come up with on the items that I build comes from a very specific moment in my life that occurs pretty much every day. And I never thought that it would be something that I'd ever really mention. I just thought it was something that was perhaps unique to me. And that is this: when in the twilight hours, when I am falling asleep at night, or even if I'm putting my feet up for a nap, in those moments of near subconscious, right between consciousness and subconscious, I have very, very visual episodes, very, very visual moments of extreme lucid acuity of items that I'm looking at creating or crafting. I solve, for me, what are complex engineering problems during those times, where I can visually take things in those moments and sort of craft them, meld them, change them, and put them together and interwork them almost like a puzzle. Certainly I cannot do that in real life with these physical items. But also at these moments it sounds silly to say I have visions, but during these moments I actually would say that I have visions of certain things that I want to create, and also certain visions that just come to me while my mind is just sort of wandering through an artistic landscape and kind of dreaming or considering or pondering things. I didn't realize how often this happens until very recently, and these moments will actually be reflected in two of the items that I'm going to make here. Okay, what that is going to be this week is this. In the inimitable stories of The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien, there have been many artists, many illustrators, many creators that have tried to recreate or capture for themselves or in their own expression certain aspects of The Lord of the Rings' vast world of characters and creations. One of them that I've seen a lot of, and if you've read The Lord of the Rings, I'm almost certain that you've seen it too, is an incredibly stylized tree. And the depictions of this tree tend to be on a specific doorway to what's called the Mines of Moria in the second book of The Lord of the Rings, called The Two Towers. And the tree comes into play, and I've seen it in other depictions throughout the stories. And basically, it almost looks like a Celtic weave. The tree grows up, it's carved into a rock, the pictures that I've seen, or drawn like it's carved into a rock. The tree grows up, and then the top branches sort of interweave through each other in this really beautiful, kind of almost looks like a bit of a bird's nest on top. It could be an oak, it could be an elm, it could be a sycamore. But for whatever reason, last week when I was starting to fall asleep, I saw an image of this sort of tree. Instead of it being the top of a tree, it was the top of a cross, and then the arms of the cross also had their own little weave and vine and root cluster, if you will, and then the bottom of the cross also had that as well. It was so crystalline to me that it just locked into my memory. I knew how I had to make it. I knew what I had to do. I've never done anything like it before, but it was simple. But in a sense, it was a very simple build to do. And without trying to sound too much more nebulous or vague or even maybe mysterious, let me show you what we're building. Let's get to the shop and get started. Alright, before we get started, for some of this video, you're going to probably notice that I have some fingernail polish on my fingers, and that's because it was nail salon day from my daughters, apparently, on one of these days. And I'm not proud of it, but at the same time, it is what it is, and you're going to probably notice. All right, I mentioned earlier that the image that I got in my head for this particular cross was, it didn't really need me to even draw it out. I decided to sort of draw it out just to sort of make sure that what I saw in my head matched a little bit of what I could probably put down on paper. Once I drew it, I didn't like what I saw on paper, so I just went straight to building it. This was going to be one of the longer pieces of twisted metal. It's 3 feet long, and then the cross section of the cross, the arms of the cross, are going to be 2 feet long. So I had to twist this in stages, and what I decided to do was, instead of twisting it all one direction, I was going to do a very randomized twist. What I really was looking for is I wanted this to look organic. I wanted it to look like a vine, a series of roots, the branches, the canopy of a tree, something that is very organic in nature. I've also been considering giving this to the lead pastor at my church, and it cracks me up in thinking about doing that, because I've been given a lot of things, and I've given things over the years that just sort of are things that you didn't expect and maybe you couldn't actually use. It's sort of like telling my pastor, hey, I crocheted a face of Jesus for you out of macaroni. Hope that you display it prominently in the foyer. Thanks, love you, bye. I jest, but that's a real consideration, especially when you're giving it to not just a individual, but something that is an entity like a church. I think he would like it, but at the same time, it just is something that's been on my mind as to, should I do it or should I not? So each of the ends of this cross, of these arms, I was going to twist even a little bit further. Again, sort of like the canopy of a tree, or I think a lot of wine grapes, of the vines of wine grapes, and the cultures and the big stumps that the old vines can make, 100-plus-year-old vines can make these really gnarled, really cool looking stump cultures. I was going for that. I don't know if I captured it perfectly, but it came close, I think. And then on each of these, I was going to wrap them in copper and get them red hot again, throw some borax, some flux on there, get them red hot again, and stick them back into the forge, thus by impregnating the copper into the steel. And for those of you that might be dubious about me saying impregnation, it genuinely is. I get the steel red hot, I put some borax flux on it, I wrap it in copper, put it back to red hot, and it actually melts the copper into the steel. It's really cool. Or at least I think it's cool. And as you'll see here, as I'm hitting this with a wire wheel, you're going to start to see that darkened metal that came out of the forge. The copper accents will start to shine through and appear. It doesn't completely clad the steel. It shows up in patches that are very random. I really, really like it. It gives it just sort of this arcane, but sort of, almost bejeweled look to it, or gilded look, I think. I think one of the things I enjoy most about that process is that when the viewer looks at it at first, you have to sort of guess, is that gilded? Is that gold coated? What am I seeing? Because it's not uniform, it's not painted, it's obviously not painted. And here we go. We have the cross in its format before I start applying what I will call the vines. All right, on to the next step. Each one of these are, they might be 1/4-inch rods. They feel a little bit thicker than 1/4-inch rods. Each one of them, I'm giving it, I was sanding it down, as you saw there, to a fine point, not too fine of a point. And then on this particular apparatus, I don't even know what it's called. I just know it's meant for materials and widths. I'm going to start bending these as randomly as I can in different directions, some with little curls, some with spikes, some all sorts of places. And then once I see something that I like, I'll go ahead and weld that together. Also being very random, I was going to make, what you're seeing here is 1/2 of an arm, and that top section now is 2 halves that I've created. One side of that section is going to be 5 vines, and the other side is going to be 4 vines. I wanted it, again, just very, very random, and that's true across all of the arms. They were 4 on one side, 5 on the other. Not making it as uniform was my goal here. Now I'm going to put these all together, and in doing so, I decided to cut 45s into each section so that I could mate them all together, kind of like a geometric puzzle piece at the end. It ended up working out really well, which is somewhat of a rarity for me to get that right first try. The only real downside to my design on this is that this is the backside, but there are going to be welds visible on the front side as well. I don't know quite how to do that better. I can probably figure out a way, but for this project there were going to be a little bit of tack welds showing. I did sand them down, but if you look close you will still see them showing. Then I welded on this bracket. This is for hanging on a wall, clearly. I just made it, and I made this little footer at the bottom so that the cross would hang in a very parallel, even way to the wall. It didn't kind of hang off of the wall. It sort of hangs evenly. And here you have it. I'm really happy with it. I'm really happy with how it turned out and how it looks. I was wondering if it looked a little bit too, I don't want to say gruesome or I don't know, gnarled, but I'm very pleased with how it turned out. Thank you for joining me for this build. I have to be honest, I'm really proud of how this turned out. It was one of the more simple, straightforward builds that I've ever done, but I'm really pleased with how this turned out. There are two takeaways, two learnings from this that I'd like to share. First off, my feeling of gratitude and good fortune, if you will, towards the man upstairs for allowing me to have those moments where I am falling asleep and I can envision things and things do come to me, and this is exactly what came to me. It didn't turn out as good as my vision of it was going to, but it turned out really good, and I'll probably make a couple of these and maybe look to sell them. The second takeaway is a really interesting one for me, and that is, while I was building this, I had intended all along to present this to the lead pastor of my church as a gift to he and the church. I had even gone so far as to reach out to him, text him saying, hey, I have something for you, would you be interested? And something kind of interesting occurred to me when I did that, and that is this. I think most of us have probably been gifted or given or presented with something from someone in our life, a family member, a friend, where it might be a piece of art, a piece of decor, or something that they say, here, I thought of you, I bought this for you, I created this for you, I wanted to give this to you. And hopefully most of the time we're flattered, we like it, we use it, that sort of thing. Every now and then, someone presents us with something where you may think to yourself, oh, you shouldn't have. It's not something that fits our aesthetic, it's not something that we will prominently display, which is probably what the intended gift might be for. And so it puts us in an interesting position of, what do I do with this item that I was gifted? And I'll be quite honest with you, I didn't want to put my pastor in the position of seeing something where he might not be interested or be interested in putting this up in his church and be put in this rough position of what does he do with something that somebody made for him like this. I don't know this, but I have a suspicion that most pastors are semi-bombarded with requests, needs, suggestions, maybe even gifts, and they only have so much time and energy that they may be of the mind to say, hey, I don't really accept these sorts of things, thank you very much. I just don't know, and I didn't want to put him in the position of having to feel that sort of awkwardness of like, oh, that's really cool, I know you put a lot of work into that, I probably won't be putting that up. It certainly does not offend me whatsoever to think of putting the time and effort in to make something and then thinking this may not be the right fit. And more importantly, far be it from me to foist something on somebody that is my creation. I wouldn't want that. But who knows? Maybe he'll see the video of the build and say, I want that thing. Who knows? Anyhow, thank you for joining me for this build. I do hope that you like it. I hope that you got something out of it. If you like projects and creations like this, check out the rest of my channel for other fantastical, whimsical builds. As I said in the introduction, weapons and armor, furniture, novelty, structures, all sorts of things. Next week, I'm going to begin a project that's probably two halves. One half is wood, one half is metal. And it's also something that came to me when I was nodding off to sleep. And it sounds cheesy, but a vision, if you will. I'll describe more of what that's going to be next week. Until then, God bless. Thank you for joining me.